Lafia, greetings and hotep. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so very much for joining me on a remix. This is the topic coming out of Omienka's production studio. It's one of our old remix, reordering the marriage vows for the blacks for the 21st century. And I guess you wonder why I hadn't come to share with you and to give you a formula or a mix, or how about a remix of the African American marriages? Yes, some of you were with me during my 7 year span of being divorced, and some of you carried along with me as I went through my search for Mr. Right. And wouldn't you know it, sometimes we get turned around and get redirected back to the same relationship. And that's what I want to share with you on this series about relationships and reordering the marriage vows for the 21st century. Surviving after a divorce and reunification. Yes, folks, I'll be talking about reunification. That is a segment that I never covered under reunification. Sometimes in a relationship, it is necessary to have reunification, and we got to get our speakers on in here so that we make sure that we are recording. And I've had that problem before where I went through a whole series and did not have my ears on. But we're not going to have that problem this time because we're going to have our ears on, and our ears are going to be up and popping. Okay, now that whole segment I may have to say again. There's so much technology these days that we have to make sure that we are awake. We got to stay woke. And sometimes at this bewitching hour, I am not completely woke. Now, let me say that again. This particular topic that we're talking about today of a remix, and the remix is reordering the marriage vow of the African American for the 21st century. Some of you were with me during my blog talk season about maybe 7 years ago when I went through a dry spell of being divorced for about 7 years. And I was so glad that you accommodated me and we went through the reordering of the marriage vow. Now I get the chance to apply it to my life after coming back after divorce and reunification. Wouldn't you know it, I had gotten ready for my engagement party, had publicized it to the world, had my friends coming to cheer me on, and had a dinner party scheduled for us to meet each other's families. And wouldn't you know it, my knight in armor showed up out of the blue. And because he never had a chance to be a part of the screening to come back and to plead his case, I had to give him the opportunity. And after giving him the opportunity, he was the best man out of the decisions. Even though I had been engaged, I had to break it off and give the same man in my life for over 40 years a chance to remap and rethink his madness. So I'm here to talk to you about reunification and surviving after a divorce. Many women don't get to talk about surviving after divorce. They'll tell you about their hardships and tears and their turmoils, but they don't tell you about the exciting part of reunification. Yes, sometimes it happens, ladies. You get a chance to remarry or to reunify back with the same man that you have legally divorced. You know how they say, I got papers on you? This segment could be that when we talk about papers, how important are papers? Now, let's just get down to the nitty gritty of it. We know in our traditional world as African Americans, there was no such thing as honoring the institution of marriage for African Americans because our slave masters were asked if we could jump the broom, and they nodded their heads, and we had this big wing dang ding dang party, and that was the end of it. It was no going down to the courthouse getting a set of papers. So let's face it, we could have long set up our own institution of marriage a long time ago. We could have remarried and divorced, remarried and divorced. We could have done that. And nobody would have said anything to us as long as we were paying them some money for that piece of paper. Now, what I like to get into is the nitty gritty of surviving. What is surviving? What does that actually mean? And how can you really relate to surviving? And how do you know that you're surviving? Well, the one thing is that you're still in love with the same person and still have something called passion for that person. And you still want to build and develop with that person. If you still have a plan and that man's plan is still workable, then you can literally reunite and have reunification back in that relationship and begin the process of building a brand new life. One of the things that I like to fashion myself on is the fact that I am a mother and I am somebody's wife. I enjoy pampering and making a fuss over those that I love. So what I pride myself on is being a good wife and also being a good mother. So no one can beat me at this particular task. I think before we pride ourselves on anything, we simply must practice the art and the institution of marriage, and we must master that. And a lot of us women, we have seen women go through several marriages and they just can't seem to master it. Well, I mastered marriage. I understood exactly what a wife should do in the relationship. My duties were always done, and managing of the house was also done, even to the point where if the man was out of work, I picked up my knapsack and my portfolio and resume and went out to help support the family. And that's what a lot of women don't want to do these days. Most marriages break up over finance, and they shouldn't have to, because there will come a time during the breeding stage that the wife will be out of the workforce, and a man must plan for that. He must plan to have to work while his wife is on downtime. And he must understand that with our fragile bodies, we're going to be on downtime. Eventually, every once in a while, we're going to be out of work. And he has to plan for it. And one of the things that really that I attested to was I was a workhorse, and I worked myself in the ground. And when I did want to sit down, it wasn't at the opportune time, because when you look at a man being out of work, the woman seems to work harder to keep up her strength so she can keep the household going. But most of the relationships fall apart over finance. And that's why I say, ladies, that if you want to keep your marriages, you're going to have to be willing to roll your sleeves up and to go out there and make the income for the household. And some women don't want to do that. They want a 50-50. And sometimes it's not always a 50-50. Sometimes you got to carry the load until that man can get back in the workforce. And you got to carry it alone. That during my 7 years of being divorced, it was a very lonesome time. And I didn't do well with dates. I didn't do well with someone asking me out on a date. I didn't know how to accept it. So I didn't date a whole lot. So I spent most of my time on the air, talking to friends and pretending to be happy, knowing that I wasn't. So I guess my energy must have sent that out into the vibration. So it brought some of my old time friends in my life proposing to me because they did not want to see me by myself. And I honored them and respected them for doing that. But I wanted to let that person know that not don't marry me out of pity because I can survive. And soon as my first husband heard about the engagement party, he quickly came over with a bubblegum ring and a card, pleading his case. I was so touched and impressed by his message that I didn't even notice that the ring was a fake bubblegum ring. All I noticed was the words that were on the cards and the sincerity of his heart. And he broke back into my life again, almost in the same original way that he did when he first proposed to me over 38 years ago. And all I could see was putting the family back together, making it whole, doing something for the benefit of the family. And it was my young son who put my hand into my husband's hand and said, "You are to be together. And this is what I want you to do. Take dad home with you." And I looked at his eyes and I saw that he was so sincere about that. And everybody was making it my fault, my fault. And when in reality, they didn't know the whole truth of the matter, but it wasn't enough to even beef over. Just like you get a cable bill and you realize you're paying all the bills, and one more bill will break the camel's back. Well, that one more bill broke the camel's back because when I saw it written and exchanged in my name, when in fact it was supposed to be in my husband's name, that's what broke the camel's back. I said, "Oh no, you're not going to get off this easy by putting this cable bill in my name. You're going to pay this bill or else." I was like Farrakhan. I gave the or else speech. That was one of the most regretted speeches that I ever gave, and I wished I had never gotten up and looked at that cable bill and gave the or else speech. Sometimes you never know what state of mind people are in, and when you make that statement, you don't realize they're taking it serious and not with a grain of salt. When I made that or else speech, then I saw that this person felt that I was putting too much on him by asking him to pay the cable bill when he had just lost his employment. So what I want to say to you ladies is that don't let finance be the cause of your breakup. You can reunify just like I did. I looked at the value of those 38 years, and those 38 years far weighed out any kind of argument or any kind of disagreement over a darn cable bill. I looked at the 38 years of being provided for, the 38 years of having a steadfast friend in my life, the 38 years of this man providing and transitioning us to higher heights and deeper depths. All of the anger had to go out the window, and reconsideration for remapping our plan had to be re-looked at and re-examined. So I'm cautioning a lot of you women out there to look at reunification. It's a lot easier, and they say it's cheaper to keep them, and it's better to live with the devil you know than the one you don't know. Of course, I didn't know what I was going to get into. I didn't know if it would be the same type of problems or greater problems. I took a gamble. I said it's better to deal with the problems that I know about than the brand new ones that I don't. And I had to excuse myself from that engagement. I had to explain to my particular husband who was asking that I was engaged to, that I wanted to take a pass and I wanted to look at taking my original husband back. He thought I was out of my mind, but nevertheless, he understood I had 20 years vested in this man and I had no years invested with him. So as I exit out for reunification, The family was notified. It was almost as if they were on a third party line through the grapevine, that they all heard that we were getting back together and that we were reunited. I began to get calls from everywhere and family members saying that they had been praying for me. And I knew they had been praying for me because my sister always stopped and gave prayer before she left my home or my presence to pray that my husband and I would reunite. And I knew it had to be her prayers that were being signaled out there. But nevertheless, when people have been coming to your house and have been using you as an example for staying together in a marriage, and then when they see your marriage shrinking and coming to a ruins or end, they feel like their whole life is caving in. So I had lots and lots of friends who came back to me, and some were angry and said, well, why did you get back married to the same person? Or why did you reunify with the same person? I said, because what I made a decision to divorce that person for, it didn't carry a lot of weight. And believe it or not, I was there in the courtroom telling the judge that I didn't want a divorce. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, well, then why are we here? You could discuss that with your lawyer. I said, I really didn't want a divorce. I just wanted my husband to take care of his responsibility. And he said, I can't help you with that. I've already divorced you. So nevertheless, he wrote it in the records that I didn't want a divorce and that I could go back and talk to my lawyer about getting undivorced. However, I felt those papers meant nothing, that there was not enough to keep me apart from the first love in my life, who was the apple of my eye and my best friend. And I looked at the fact that in a zillion years, you'll never be able to find a person that thinks like you, that can respond and read your mind, and that actually can put up with your idiosyncrasies. I was beginning to see that I would never be able to put up with this other man's idiosyncrasies because I was very upset over an argument that we had, and I believe the spirit just came in the room and started this argument, and it was time to go when I had an argument with him about him going to a party. And I began to think, well, I don't own this man. He can go anywhere he want to go, but maybe that was the spirit telling me that this is not going to work. And I was able to get into that argument so I can get out of that engagement. And wouldn't you know it, word had it that there was not going to be an engagement party and no marriage. We could have lost many, many more years, and we could have had a difficult time. Let's see if this is going to come back in here. I don't know why it's doing this. It seems as though we had been apart for so many years. Those 7 years appear to be a lot of years. Now, is it moving here? It looks like it's still moving, but I'm kind of stuck on the same page. Now, I'd like to say for the record, Reordering the Marriage Vow is a series that helped a lot of people. I know it did for a lot of my friends, and a lot of my friends. I'm going to see if I can tune out here maybe. Are you sure? Okay, here we go. And it helped a lot of my friends. A lot of friends called in on the radio station talking about their relationship. So at the same time, when we were trying to reunify people to go and get married, we were also helping them to transition out of the marriage. And a lot of people asked me about that. I said, well, everyone should have that right to exit a marriage if they want to. This is a right. Children sometimes help you do this unification. And not only do the children help you do the unification, you have to look at, you count all the costs, and you look at the years and the fact that you promised to grow old with that significant other. And especially don't let that person be sick, because a part of you is sick too. And everybody loses in a divorce. And you have to look at your bleeding and hemorrhaging just like that other person is. So no one wins in a divorce unless it's a physical thing where you need to get out. And that wasn't the case for me. And I guess that when you get to a point, of physically being tired in the workforce, because sometimes we work like dogs in the workforce to have things and to keep up with the Joneses. And it might be better for that man to take that woman off her feet and sit her at home, and then she can think straight. And she won't think like she's heading up the family and paying for everything and being responsible for everything. With that kind of load on your shoulder, you can say a lot of things you don't mean because you're physically and mentally tired. But reordering of the marriage vow taught me a lot of things. It taught me that I was a good wife. I was a good mother, and that my skills should be shared with somebody else, and that I had to hurry up and reunify myself and get back into the game of marriage, because I had no business out here outside of the will of the institution of marriage by myself. It's a dangerous world out there when you're single. I didn't know anything about being single because I got married right out of college, graduated on a Friday, got married on a Sunday. So I never had a chance to be free and wild. I was always a married woman. I enjoyed being a married woman. It was my forte. I enjoyed making a fuss over keeping the house clean and getting the children to their main events and participating in their school activity. And so did my husband. We were a team. So everybody kept saying, but you had such a good life together. How could you get a divorce? I said the same thing. I said, I don't know anybody else that I spent this much time with over the years. I can't replace him. I said the same thing. But nevertheless, this one thing in his life he was not willing to stop or put down, and I posed an ultimatum for him, and I put up a challenge. Now, maybe the 7 years did it. That's probably what broke the camel's back and made him to reassess the situation. But nevertheless, I was engaged and was due to be married to another man, and that broke his heart. He couldn't stand for that, and he had to swallow his pride and ask me to take him back again. I said, if you ask me, I'll say yes. If you ask me. And I was just waiting all those 7 years for him just to ask me, because we had never been broken up before and never been apart. So, except for one time, temporarily. But he had never asked me, can I come home? I want to come home. I'm sorry. I can do better. I'll pay that cable bill. I'll take some pressure off of you. I won't put you out there to go to work like a horse slave. I will let you come home and take your sabbatical. I will let you take your sick leave without feeling like you have to turn around and go back to work. Ladies, sometimes we have to express to the man when we can't take anymore. And sometimes that little thing like a cable bill can be that very thing that breaks the camel's back. But in reordering the marriage vow, we must understand that our marriages are not like white Caucasian marriages. Our marriages are different. And we must understand that if our man loses his job, we've got to roll our sleeves up and figure out a way how to get both of us a job. And that's what I did. I went right out there and I said, well, Lord, how can I find a job for me and my husband both so that I can take a job and I can carry him along with me? And wouldn't you know it, God created the opportunity for me to go overseas to Europe to take a job, and I was able to negotiate a job for my husband too. If you take me, you'll have to hire my husband too. I said, we'll do that. We'll give him a job when he gets over. That was the thing to do to get him out of that rut so he can realize he'll be working too. He wasn't working immediately at first, but he was able to get a job thereafter so that I could sit down for a while. In this thing called life and marriage, we have to go through ups and downs with the woman wearing the pants in the household, taking care of the family, and then with the man taking care of the child at home. We switch roles, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we cannot let society pressure us into what is politically correct. We are not white folks. We cannot carry on in our marriages like white folks. We have got to prepare reordering the marriage vow for African black folks. And I did not say Caucasian or Anglo. I said for black folks, because our family life is different. My background is family life education. And in family life education, I have plenty of episodes to write about a good black family and what the necessities are for a good family and a good black family relationship. And one of the things that we have not talked about is our uniqueness of having black roles in black relationship. And in my survival kit, I have talked about surviving and reunification in a marriage, something that nobody's writing about. They're not telling you the beauty and the value of reunification. During our reunification, we spent about 6 months to a year on sabbatical, just us two together, sporting and dating again, and living the life of the hotel and enjoying ourselves. Hello there, how are you? And living the life of swimming every day, out in the hotel, enjoying ourselves, having a la carte room service, and not having to prepare dinner and not having a time or day to get up. That's the best thing you can do for yourself. Go back with your husband and order room service and a hotel and spend your time with that man in a hotel for the next 6 months if you have to, and see if things are going to fly off and they're going to work. And if things work for you, then you know you can get back together. If I was able to get back together after a 38-year relationship and then after 7 years being divorced, I knew that we could make it through the next century. And now we're headed for over 50 years of being in the marriage together. We will recount these 7 years back up in the relationship. We're talking about reordering the marriage vow for the African American for the 21st century. What I like to say is that most of us don't know that we can swallow our pride. And who cares about what the world say when you decide to remarry the same man? And don't let anyone say, how dull can that be? If anything, familiarity breeds contentment. Discontentment is from unfamiliarity. I am better off living with the person I know than the one I don't know. Now, you're probably wondering how the story ends. You can go out on Blog Talk and listen to some of my series on reordering the marriage vow for the 21st century for the African American. And you can see how things panned out. I interviewed several men to be a part of me asking what it is that Omi wants. They presented their case on what they thought I wanted, and I had to select a king for a day. I selected 3 men out of those groups during that week that we were interviewing, and each one of those men played a role. It was all a comical role, but there's a real segment out there for the engagement, and that talks about the engagement. And you can see where we went from the courting engagement. So it taught a lot about marriage qualities, how to use courting in your relationship. It talked about also the dowry, because some national American, there we go. Oh, we got a person in here that is named Zollner. How are you, Zollner? Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for the compliments. I am not looking to get hooked up with anyone and to reunify with anyone. I've been reunified and I've been verified. So I'm good to go now and reconnected. And you can be reconnected too. You could be reunified with your ex if that's something you want to do. Now, don't go over there trying to get reunified with your ex if he's already remarried and he's in love with his new wife. That's not going to work. And don't go knocking at that person's job and following them. No, that's not going to work. It has to be something that is a consensual thing where you both decide you want to get back together and you're not hooked up and tied down with someone else. Reunification is a new word for a lot of you. Some of you wouldn't even dream of going back to the same man. You just keep going through different men over and over again with the same problems, repeating the same problem. Now, if you found out that that first marriage was your fault, and you can do things family by putting on her big boy pants and going out there, getting a job to maintain the whole family until he was able to get up on his feet. That's right. And there's not a lot of women that are willing to get their nails dirty and to go out there and have to put on their rubber boots and get out there in the mess until their husband can get up on his feet to get a job. Now, I want to say this for the record. All jokes aside, reunification is a serious, serious thing. And you have to know what you're doing. Because when you take that man back, you're not signing any papers this time, but you have a commitment in your heart. And once you give your word should be your bond. You should do everything in your power to make that relationship work, to make sure the lines of communication are open. You're not stagnant in the way you feel. You're having discussions. You're spending time together, quality time together. And you're answering to each other's beck and call. Whatever that person wants, if you can provide it for them, give it to them. And if it's something that you can do extra for that person, go out of your way. Because time in this world is short. So many women go through so many marriages and they see the little things that they could have overlooked or changed to keep that marriage together rather than starting all over again. And I am one who believes that you must give people a chance. And in our time of grief, we must look at ourselves to see what we could do to change, to reunify. And I'm all about reunification, surviving after a divorce. How do you survive? What are some of the things you do? Number one, women, just because you've gotten divorced, that doesn't mean you go running around with every man announcing that you're free, because you could become the talk of the town. You got to keep a low profile. That's right, going to things with your girlfriend and not being seen out with every John, Dick, Joe, and Harry, and making sure that you're still a lady and that you're presentable. Because your husband's going to check up on you if you're still available, to see if you're still alone, who you're hanging out with. He wants to see that you're lonely and that you're still there by yourself so he can make his approach on you, because he's still in the market to get back with you. Now, if there's a chance for you and him to get back through the children, and when they're young and still impressionable, sometimes you have to make these decisions for the benefit of the children. But don't let it all be for the benefit of the children, because if you're suffering and hurting in that relationship, all the children in the world won't turn that marriage around. You've still got to have love in your heart for each other and still have some plans that you can complete together. Well, my husband and I hadn't finished with the plans that we wanted to complete together. No, we hadn't finished with them. And you need to understand that a man doesn't need a wife if he doesn't have any plans. But every man that has plans needs a wife to help him carry out those plans. And I want to say for the record, if you have some plans, then you need a wife. The Bible tells you that it's a good thing for a man to find a wife. And that means that they look for qualities. And I'm going to look monies that's being bequeathed to them by their grandmothers, grandfather, so they're set financially. They don't have the stresses of how they're going to pay the bills, how they're going to find the money for the down payment for a house. They have all those things that are given to them and that help them. Whereas African Americans will start off with a crisis, and it could be a financial crisis, which can take its toll on the marriage and cause a lot of problems. But we must remember, we can overcome. We're overcomers. And one of the reasons why I'm still married and still working on over 40 years now, which is a great thing. And I can't tell you that I did that alone. That was through prayer and perseverance from my loved ones and from me being chaste in reverence, believing that I should still be married and be with a good man. And God did send me back the same man I had He was a good man. He was just temporarily insane for a moment. And sometimes people can come back to their senses. And I'm willing to give anybody a chance that's willing to make a difference in their life. And I am a no nonsense person. I don't have that kind of tolerance where I can wait for you to get it together, because I believe that every man should carry his own weight. And I don't think that a man should put all the weight on a woman in a relationship. If a woman takes on all the weight in the marriage, I learned a lot through the 7 period. I learned a lot about myself. Start this thing over, then we won't be pointing the finger, but we'll just get in there and we'll both pitch in, and we won't put all the pressure on one person because I'm working, making the most money. We'll realize that sometimes there must be down period for each of us. And we have to understand that when a woman feels like she's carrying all the weight, she'll just throw the whole thing in and call it quits. But a man has to come to her rescue and say, oh no, darling, I must take over now and help you. You take a break for a while. And that's what it's all about in reunification. Reunification is very important, and striving and then thriving after a divorce. Are you surviving, or are you just getting along? You can do more than just get along. You can take a sabbatical when you get back with that man, or if he's proposing to get back with you. Take a vacation. Go somewhere where you and that significant other can talk and hear each other and make confessions and reunite, have a real reunification. And I'm talking to African Americans specifically, and more particularly. I don't know what goes on, that seniors get older and sometimes they need to be assisted living. You don't want your loved one to be out there by herself in a nursing home. You want to take good care of them. You want to be their guardianship. You want to go to the nursing homes and help them. You want to be their best friend. You don't let them go at that thing alone, because you haven't established a new life. Do what you can for that particular person, the significant other that becomes ill. And make sure you're at the doctor's appointments and hospital appointments, because they need you. And this is a time when you're using your friendship. You might not be intimate with that person, but you're still being a good friend to that person and taking care of them. And sometimes that's all they need. Don't let them leave this earth disgruntled and unhappy and saddened because they had to go to a nursing home. We can do better. And African Americans, I want you to take this serious. The reordering of the marriage vow for the African American for the 21st century is back, and we're going to be talking about reunification. What do you do in a reunification? You take vacations and you go on sabbatical with that significant other. You get to re-know each other over again. You try to be a little bit serendipity, a little bit lighthearted. Don't take so many things serious. The cares of life puts a lot of pressure on us, and we begin to take everything serious. When we get a fixed income, if God should bless us to get a pension and Social Security, then that's guaranteed money coming in, hopefully, you think. And we can use that to pay our bills without putting pressure on one another. Because when you're working 8 to 5, you become ill and you shut down, all hands on deck. It's about to go down because somebody can't get to work like they used to. Some bills won't get paid. Somebody is not going to be able to meet their obligation for car notes or obligation for house note. You know it's about to go down. So you have got to plan better financially for those occasions, because they're bound to happen. And don't let it happen to you and break up your happy home. Make yours a happy home. And you've been listening to Maddie Harvey's baby sister, who prayed me through my reunification and stayed on her knees for the reunification of our marriage. And thank God to Maddie Harvey for interceding on my behalf. I hope you get a laborer in the harvest that will intercede on your behalf. Make yours a happy home. Reunification is the way to go. Reordering the marriage vows for the African American for the 21st century and reunification. Thank you so very much for joining me this evening. Stay tuned for our next segment on reordering the marriage vow for the 21st century. Oh, dabble and baba booey to you, y'all.